Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My ex-husband, 65 male, and I, 64 female, were only married for a year, but we had been together for 14 years, since we were respectively 34 and 33, before we finally got married. After a year, he said he wasn't happy and married his current wife, 38 female, 6 months later. We didn't talk for 5 years, but after those 5 years, he reconnected with my daughter, his stepdaughter, who was 3 when she met him and was 18 when her stepdad and I split up. I had to interact with him because of my daughter, and he apologized for how cruel he was in the past, and says he wasn't the one who blocked my daughter's calls or deleted her emails to him. That was his wife's doing. I recently found out that he was diagnosed with stage 4 of a very aggressive cancer and didn't have much time left. In his last lucid conversation, he said his wife, despite him being the father of her 2 kids, 8 male, 4 male, has run off all his home care. One nurse called her an insane drama queen before quitting, and wants to send him to a nursing home where he'll be basically alone. The kid's nanny also refuses to help care for my ex-husband, saying she's not qualified and it's not her job. My daughter and I have been over a few times to help do everything from change his diaper to dealing with vomit. But after a few times, my daughter says she's still very resentful that he ditched her for 5 whole years, and that she will clean vomit off me, her future kids, and her husband, but not somebody who 2 years ago said he wasn't allowed to attend her wedding. After that, she barely came because he was already implying he wanted to spend his last days with either me or his former stepdaughter. I talked to his current wife, and she said she's fed up staying at home all the time and dealing with the drama of having caregivers around her and her sons. She said if I wanted to take him, she'd be happy to help facilitate it, or else he was going to a nursing home. I know that if he enters a nursing home, he'll likely die alone and be surrounded by unfriendly, unfamiliar faces. I have spent many hours contemplating this decision because I don't think anybody deserves to die alone. Perhaps I also feel like I still have some sort of caregiver-like sense of attachment to him, since I had taken care of him while he was sick for over 15 years. However, while his wife is practically swimming in money, I live very modestly, and that's all I can afford. Giving him care would run me dry, and I don't know how my daughter would feel coming over and seeing her stepfather, who, as I said, probably will not be lucid. Will I be an a-hole? I am seriously agonizing over this decision. OP is not an a-hole. OP is a good person with a strong sense of duty. OP is not turning her back on him. He turned his back on OP and her daughter for a shallow and selfish person. He has to live and die with the consequences of his decision. Since OP wants to be generous, she can visit him regularly at his nursing home. That is more than most people in her position would do, and he will receive good care there. I got married last year after dating Liam for about 5 years. His wife died about 10 years ago. They were married for a very long time and had 2 kids. Naturally, they bought a house together and raised their kids there. Beth, his former wife, is a lovely woman, died after a tragic accident, leaving Liam and their kids. With the boys growing, Liam moved into the city I was living in and bought a little apartment, but kept his house. He didn't start taking me up to his house until we had been together for about 2.5 years. It's preserved in the way it was when Beth was the queen of the castle. Her photos everywhere, her decorating style, her clothes still in the closets. I don't begrudge this. I think they should keep her things. The boys were young when she died, and her death was a huge loss to them. I don't mind her things, although I won't lie. It does make me feel like a trespasser. I feel like I'm intruding on her space. I'm getting close to retirement, and I'd like a house somewhere where I can get away from the city to relax. Liam suggested we use his home. I very gently suggested that if we're going to use his house, that maybe I could redecorate just a little bit, so I feel at home. He shut me down, said it was for the sake of the boys that he leaves this house exactly as it is. Okay, I said, and explained to him why it just wouldn't work for me to live in her house. I tried explaining that I'm not mad or jealous, but don't I have the right to feel comfortable in my own home? So I suggested we buy another house and we would keep his house for the boys. Again, I was shut down. He said he has a perfectly good house and we should use it. Once again, I explained that if I'm going to live there, I need to at least integrate some of myself into it because, as of right now, I'm uncomfortable. I mean, we don't even sleep in the master bedroom because that was their bed. But again, I understand, but I want somewhere of my own as well. So I went and bought my own home in the same town with the intent that Liam and I would share it. It's not a huge house and not very expensive, but it's mine. I was upfront about it when I bought it. But lately he's been kind of pissy about the whole thing and refuses to stay in the house with me. He'll come over, but he won't sleep over. So if I want to share a bed with my husband, I have to go to his house. Meanwhile, I'm all alone at our house. Hell, even his boys have slept over at my house before. But that was probably for my mean Sunday pancakes. I'm curious, am I the a-hole here? OP is definitely not an a-hole. I hate calling OP's husband the a-hole because of his wife's tragic death, but he's being an a-hole. OP is not asking him to get rid of his house or get rid of Beth's things. OP is not even asking him to make room for her in his house. OP is asking him to stay at the new house OP bought sometimes, so OP can have some place to call ours. He's basically telling OP that sleeping with portraits of his deceased wife is more important than OP. Something's gotta give. He needs to compromise somewhere, and frankly, OP has been doing all the compromising here. If he's still emotionally not ready to redecorate any of her things, then he needs to agree to therapy. If he can't agree to therapy and doesn't want to give up her things, then he needs to agree to sleep in OP's house with OP. He can't have it both ways. He can't simultaneously insist that OP lives in his house, but refuse to let OP move anything around or redecorate anything. He's using the boys as an excuse to not move on, which isn't okay. He's not being honest with OP or himself. Edited to add. A few quick additions. His boys were 12 and 10 when Beth died, so they are indeed grown now, and they've taken my side in this situation. I'm still rather young, in my 40s, but a very smart business decision has ensured I can afford to retire within a year or two, after which Liam and I would like to have IVF or adopt a child. But I refuse to bring a child into this situation until the housing situation is taken care of. I don't think this is why Liam is refusing to budge though, because he was suggesting we start seeing doctors just last week and has even been suggesting names. I've suggested marriage counseling, but he stopped going to therapy after 4 sessions when Beth died, so I doubt I'll be able to get him back in. I'm willing to try everything before I consider divorce. Other than this major issue, he's been an amazing partner. I, 29 female, and my partner, 30 male, have been talking about having kids for the last few years, but hadn't really planned on trying for another 3 to 4 years. My sister, 34 female, and her husband, 33 male, have been trying for a child for almost 7 years. My sister has fertility issues and has been on all sorts of hormone supplements, and they are now doing IVF. But the first 2 rounds have been unsuccessful, so things aren't going well. Last year I had an issue with my birth control, where an antibiotic I was on stopped it from working. I didn't realize I was pregnant until I was almost 6 months along, as I didn't have periods on birth control, and I had just gotten out of our country's lockdown, so chalked up a bit of weight gain to sitting around, not going to the gym, and eating comfort food. My partner and I made the decision to keep the baby, as we can afford it, and had been planning to have kids in the future anyway. We started buying all the prerequisite baby things, told family, contacted a midwife, etc. From the start, my sister was unhappy, but hid it well. I sat down with her and explained that it was an accident. We didn't mean for her to feel bad, etc. She said she understood. She was just having trouble coping, which I understood. When I was 33 weeks along, I was in a side-on car crash after a driver ran a light. I had several injuries and was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks. And despite an emergency C-section and an amazing NICU team, my baby didn't make it. We were absolutely devastated. We made the decision while I was recovering that we would try to have another child as we felt ready to be parents, and in January started trying. I got pregnant almost immediately, and now I'm 13 weeks along. We told our families at 12 weeks. Both sets of parents were thrilled, especially after what happened last year. My sister, not so much. She stormed out of the dinner with our parents where we announced the news, and the following day when I reached out to apologize to her for being insensitive, she went off on me, accusing me of deliberately making her look bad and like less of a woman, and that now her husband regretted marrying her. She said that she could accept that I accidentally got pregnant, but now I was just deliberately rubbing her face in it, and even went so far as to say I should get an abortion and tell everyone it was a miscarriage so she doesn't look bad. I was horrified and hung up on her. I can't help but feel bad. She's my sister and I love her, and I know how the last few years have been hard on her. Am I the a-hole for deliberately getting pregnant when she can't? OP is not an a-hole. I feel for OP's sister and the long-term stress and trauma she's endured. But she can't expect the world to stop having babies because it's a trigger for her. That OP can never understand her feelings doesn't mean OP can be her punching bag. Hopefully she'll come around. It sounds like she really needs therapy for this though. My ex and I were together for 2 years. He is actually really wealthy, like doesn't need to work wealthy, but he basically hid the extent of his wealth from me for 2 years, right up till he proposed. Then, within a space of 2 weeks, it was, ta-da, I'm a millionaire, and we can't get married without a prenup. Money, which had previously never been an issue in our relationship, I was earning 6 figures myself, suddenly became a huge thing. There was talk of lawyers and heaps of conversations around the prenup. I was deeply uncomfortable with the fact that he'd hidden it so well, and I kind of was left thinking I would never be an equal partner in this relationship. During the course of the 2 weeks, I found out he was estranged with his siblings because of money and not because they were toxic. And I couldn't see a very happy future with the extended family either. So I broke it off and gave his ring back. He was really upset and then accused me of breaking up with him in order to manipulate him into dropping the prenup. I told him I had no intention of doing anything like that, and if he really thought that, it's best we break up anyway. Now, I completely understand why he did that, but being on the receiving end of it didn't feel good. Anyway, we parted ways. I maintained no contact and asked him not to speak to me. A few months later, I met someone else, and my husband and I got married 2.5 years later. A few days before we were due to get married, my ex caused a bit of a ruckus, calling me and messaging me to reconsider, to get back together, and everything he had was mine. I told him to get professional help, that this was unhealthy, and I've long since moved on. I then blocked him and got married and didn't really think about him any further. A few days ago, my husband and I bumped into him at some charity thing. Keep in mind, I haven't seen him in person in 6 years, and the last time I had any contact with him was around 3.5 years ago, before the wedding. So when he came up to me while I was in a group of people, my husband included, and was like, "This could have been us," I was beyond fed up. That's when I rolled my eyes and said, "Get over it already. It's been 6 years. This never could have been us, and I'm glad." He was like, "That's harsh." And I was like, "Just stop. Seriously stop. This is sad. Just move on already." He went really red and walked off, and I didn't see him for the rest of the night, but I was also too pissed off to really look. A few people that were in my group kind of laughingly said that I was harsh, or that was cold. My husband said he agreed with the sentiment, but it did come across as a bit, understandably, harsh. But he also admitted that he was only able to be nice about it because we're in a good place. So, was I the a-hole? Do I need to apologize? I normally don't act like this, but I thought I was done with my ex. Not an a-hole. What he did in the first place, hiding the truth from OP for such a long time, is pure deception. Hiding the truth is the same as lying. OP did well back then to think rationally and break up with him, and she did well now. OP's response was appropriate. I hope he stops bothering OP and finds peace with himself. My husband and I have 4 kids. Henry, 35 male, Lisa, 33 female, Elizabeth, 30 female, and Sean, 28 male. We bought a 6-bed, 7-bath house for next to nothing before Henry was born. Now that all of our kids have moved out, we decided to sell our house and buy a condo on the beach. Henry and Lisa both live near me and my husband, and I'd say we have a good relationship with both of them, but we're closer to Henry. He and his wife, Abigail, 36 female, have us over for brunch every Sunday. They come over with their kids, 3 female and 5 female, often. And we would go on vacations together since before 2020. Lisa and I talk on the phone maybe once a week, and she comes over, invites us over, maybe twice a month. Henry and Abigail currently live in a 2-bedroom house, but Abigail recently found out she's pregnant, and they're looking for something bigger. They asked us to help them with house hunting, but housing prices have drastically increased since we bought our house, and they wouldn't be able to afford anything more than 3 bedrooms, even though they both have good jobs. We offered to sell them our house for the price of the house they were going to buy, and they were elated. We drew up a contract and have a payment plan in place. We have enough money from the sale to buy the condo we were looking at. Lisa and I were talking today, and she asked how selling the house is going, and I told her that we're selling it to Henry and Abigail. She was enraged when I told her and said that we should have offered to sell our house to her too, since she's looking for a bigger place too. She didn't tell us this. I told her that Henry and Abigail need the space more because they have kids and she's single and childless. Then she started to yell at me for discriminating against her because she's single and childless. Am I the a-hole for selling my house to my son and not my daughter? Yes, an a-hole for giving 1/4 of OP's children $2 million and 3/4 of OP's children nothing.